Giggity giggity goo, my dudes. This is the track review of 2017, Round 3, Anaheim 2, and I'm kind of going back to some of the more earlier 2017 Supercross tracks and doing some reviews. I may be kind of all over the place with it, and I thought my front fender was going to be basic bitch, but I actually, I don't know, I changed snapshots in between when I made this demo right here and then when I actually am recording this video, and usually it none of your skins are saved or anything like that, but for some reason it's still there. I have no idea how that happened, but either way, that probably makes sense to absolutely nobody. But yeah, I wanted to go back in here and do some the reviews of some of the earlier tracks, just kind of give my opinions on them. And that's, I may come in here and do round 3 and then go back and do round 1 and then just anything like that. So don't expect any sort of chronological order or anything like that. But yeah, this was just a little online 05 race, I'm pretty sure. So I'm just kind of got the race playing in the background, but it's a track review. So yeah, it's just some decent footage of the track, and yeah, so either way, this was quite the different track design if you had rode on round 1 and 2. This was pretty much the biggest culture shock we've seen in a cold minute with the different sort of AMA tracks. As far as when you'll get round 1 and then having it, how different it is from round 1, I would say this is very different, and that's completely cool. I mean, I think it's okay for them to change the tracks up, and you've seen the difference in real life of how different round 3 to round 4 was, just having the rain and stuff like that and then being in a dome. So they definitely are different in real life. But I looked on some of the forum posts and stuff about the track, and the track maker was saying that the reason why he was making these rolled off berms was because he didn't want us to quad into rhythms and stuff like that. That's why he was making these kind of berms. That's just straight from the forum. So, I was kind of wondering what was their thought process in making the berms like they are here. And he simply said so we wouldn't quad into the rhythms, which kind of confused me a little bit there. I'm sure that's not the only reason, but that's not how you stop us from quadding into rhythm sections, because whenever you make a smoothed off berm, all that does is it makes it to where it's got less of a skill gap and everybody just has to slow down more. It makes the whole entire racetrack slower. If you want to keep us from quadding something, oh my god, that save was insane. But if you want to keep us from quadding into a rhythm section, doing something super unrealistic, shout out to my homeboy Scott Swatling. Well, what's up, Junior? Got to throw that Junior in there, bro. But yeah, I see all your guys' comments and stuff, and when you talk in chat, I see it. I got you, dog. But yeah, what I was saying is, if you want to stop us from hitting some unrealistic jump or whatever, and I know that's a big concern of the track makers because they don't want it to look absolutely goofy whenever you see it on a live stream or something, and they just want the realistic experience to be there, and I totally understand that. But if you want to keep us from quadding in a rhythm section, you need to either add a little bit of roughness or add a little bit of ruts, or something like that is way better of an option than to just totally smooth off the berms. Because whenever you make the berms like that, what it does is it makes it to where other people just use people as berms. That's what they do. And I noticed that whenever I was racing here, not to mention the fact that I was having some crazy lag with that new snapshot in this race. Didn't even make it to the main event, but that's besides the point. But anyways, what I'm saying is if you have such a smoothed off berm, the person, let's say you got 2 people racing, okay, and the person in front is going to be having to slow down a crap load just to get cornered properly in a smoothed off berm like that. So therefore, the dude is just going to simply come up the inside and bounce off of that other guy and ricochet off of him and use him as the berm. And that happens more times than not on these tracks, whereas if you have a solid built berm, that person in front can actually carry their speed through the berm, so you don't have nowhere near as many of those just silly cut somebody off and just block pass just to try to get a little bit of something that's helping you slow down quicker in the corner, because that's what happens in these kind of corners, because you simply cannot get slowed down quick enough and cornered properly quick enough, because you're not banking off of anything when it's this smooth. And I do believe there is a little bit of skill in this. It's kind of got like a different skill to it, but I just, like I'm saying, I love culture shocks. Don't get me wrong. I love when they go in there and really change it up and try to make it how real life is, where the tracks are quite different from one another. But whenever you make a track that's got a smaller skill gap, that's when I'm not much of a fan of it, because all that does, like this track right here, not just the corners, but the jumps themselves as well, that for whatever reason, it was almost like the big rhythms weren't even worth your time. And that's something you'll notice on some tracks out there. And when it's like that, it just, I don't know. I'm not the fan, because, like, why have a big rhythm if it's faster to hit the smaller rhythm? It does not make any sense. And it's the way the jumps are actually built. I know I'm going to have some fuckos out there that are like, oh, they copy the exact proportions of the jumps of the real-life replica track, Spencer. What are you talking about? Dog, they can go in there and change the way the jumps actually feel. That in the peaks of them, and just any slight little change on that stuff can make a quad be the difference in a must-hit rhythm section, and then you don't even want to hit it because the triple's actually faster. So, they still go in there and change things even though it is a replica track. So, I think a lot of people get that part twisted. But, I thought that overall it was okay to have this track, being a little different, being a little whatever, having the berms every berm smoothed off. That's what was crazy about this track, was the fact that it wasn't just like they smoothed off 2 berms. It was like every berm on this track felt totally different than round 1 and 2. It's like they just did not have the height, the berm just did not have the hold you kind of properties that round 1 and 2 had, which I thought, like I'm saying, is completely fine for one round, but as long as it doesn't become their normal, like they think, hey, we need to make every RF replica track like this, then I'll be just fine. I thought there was nothing wrong with making one track like this, but picturing this being how the rest of the 17 tracks are, that's not a good thought process. But seeing what they did with round 4, I was actually pretty impressed. I know some people wasn't a big fan of that track, but I thought it was pretty sick, dude. I thought the rhythm sections made sense. They were actually faster if you hit the bigger lines, and it was a cool, tricky, totally different feel of a track. Like a little bit more wide open, a little bit more of like a dry, smoothed off kind of feel, which was cool for round 4. But yeah, man, I absolutely loved round 1 and 2. I think that was kind of a pretty basic general consensus of most people. I know some people hated round 2. Don't know why. Pretty sure the only reason you could possibly hate round 2 is if you absolutely sucked at hitting manly jumps. That's the only reason you could hate that track. But other than that, I thought that track was awesome. And round 1 was pretty sick too. But yeah, this track right here, decent. Definitely not my favorite. Thought it was a cool little change up. Maybe a little too much of a change up in the in the berm side of things. But I don't know. When it gets to a pro level, you got to have that skill gap. And this was one of those tracks where like a 250 could be pert near just as fast as a 450, because there was no humongous separating rhythms. The whoop sections weren't really, really difficult. And that's something I've kind of noticed with the 17s. The whoops are pretty chill. When you go back and look at some of the 16 whoop sections in some of the other years, it's kind of like they've stepped up the whoops every single year. But with this, it's not quite like that. So that's kind of one thing. But yeah, I thought, when I seen round one, I'm probably going to do a separate review on that, but I'll go ahead and give my quick little opinion on that. I thought it was awesome. I mean, the overall scale of everything and the way that the width of the track was perfect. They didn't get it too narrow like I thought 16 was. And, I felt like 16, a lot of those tracks were just cramped down. It was like everything was just too small. And I started to get that vibe a little bit from this track right here. As far as the jump distances and stuff, everything just felt cramped down and smaller than it should have been. Like as far as an overall scale feel, whereas like round 1 and 2, I felt like they were perfect on that scaling aspect of it. Felt like it got back to more of a bigger, realistic kind of feel, more so than like you're in a tiny little box. So yeah, definitely super impressed with round 1, but round 3, okay, cool little change up. I know some people were really pissed off about the berms and stuff, but I thought they were okay for one round. I thought it was, 110% okay for one round, and even if they come in there and make one more track kind of like this, it wouldn't be an absolute game changer, but as long as it doesn't become the norm, that's all I'm saying. But yeah, I really want to see a little bit of roughness or some ruts. They have like one on each RF track. They'll have like one inside rut somewhere, but it would just be cool to have some of them be a little more actually like rough on some of these sections that are super smooth. They just become so basic when they're perfectly flat like that. It would just be cool to see some RF tracks, keyword there is some, have just a small like micro roughness all the way around the track where it just gives it a bit more of a real feel. Seems like for whatever reason they want to make them super, super smooth, and I could understand that on some of the tracks, like it's perfectly prepped Supercross track, but it would just add a whole nother skill level to it if they would go in there and add a little bit more realistic ruts and roughness here and there, but you can definitely go overboard with that too, and then it doesn't even feel like a Supercross track, but just having a little bit of change up in that area, and that'll actually make it to where you're way less likely to hit a quad in on a rhythm section or something like that if you got a little bit of roughness in there or a little bit of like micro ruts coming out of the corners, because that's how real life Supercross is. I mean, pert near every one of those tracks has 4 or 5 ruts coming out of most of those corners. So that's a part of it, but when you get it like perfectly silky smooth, that's how people get where they just rail around a corner and quad in or do something totally unrealistic. If you just had slight micro roughness all the way around the track, I promise you wouldn't be hitting those same ridiculous jumps that some people can hit. So anyways, I'm going to give this track comparing it to all other tracks out there, I'm going to give it it's difficult, man, because when you tie in the stadium and everything like that, I mean, it's okay, but I just was not a big fan of some of the way the berms and stuff were, and I know everybody's like, oh, stop crying about the berms. I ain't crying about it, dog. I thought it was fine for one round, one or two rounds, I thought it was okay, but I'm going to give this track since it is an RF style track and all that, man, I don't know. It's tough. I'd give it a 7 overall. I know that might seem kind of low-ballish, but that's really the way I feel about this track. I thought it was an okay change-up. Probably the worst track of 17 so far, though. And it's not just the berms, it's everything else as well. The jumps feeling a little cramped down, small, like the quads weren't really worth your time at all. Certain stuff like that. This triple right here feels smaller than some other triples. I don't know what was going on with that. May have just been a replica type thing, but yeah, it's one of those kind of weird tracks. Might be kind of hard to find your groove on for sure. Because these flat sections over here are perfectly smooth, so almost has like a unrealistic feel in that sense a little bit. But yeah, so 7 overall. I'd say the difficulty is medium. So anyways, appreciate you guys watching all these videos. Later, dudes.